Welcome all. I'm joined today by Stefan Ziegler, a producer and initiator of a film called Broken, a Palestinian journey through international law. The film will be screened at the Apricot Film Festival, the American University of Armenia, the Yerevan State University, in the city of Kapan, at the Genocide Memorial at Ցիծեր, and a screening will also be organized by a Swiss-Armenian NGO called CASA. So Stefan, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
To start off, can you explain why the film is called Broken, and can you tell us a bit about the film? Can you introduce the film to our watchers?
Sure. Now I'm giving away a secret because that only happens at the end of the film, normally. But it's important to know that in the English language, at least, there's a proverb that says broken promises. So this is the film about the broken promises of international law vis-a-vis, in this case, the Palestinian people, but also the international community losing out on an opportunity to, not build a wall illegally, but more of it probably a little bit later. The film itself is based on a court case from 2004 at the ICJ, the International Court of Justice, an opinion that was then later on reverted back to the United Nations General Assembly and by a vast majority adopted as guidance. Not as hard law, but in a sense soft law, if you wish. And this is followed through archive materials and those people, the judges, some of them, 3 of them, and others that were actually part of that court case at the time. So when the film came out, it was 14 years later, and we hear from judges talking about what they think about the case now. That obviously nothing happened. International law is very often like this, as we know, sadly. But it's interesting to see it through the eyes of a judge who was given the mandate to rule amongst 15 or 14 others and then reflect on that. And in fact, we never thought that we would get such personalities to publicly speak about their work and their decisions and maybe things that they're not quite sure now were maybe the right things or not. And so that's where the film becomes dynamic. Although it's a lot about people talking, we intercept in the film footage from archives during the court proceedings, during the UN, at the Security Council, and on the other hand, we're filming stuff that has not been filmed before. It's very, very dangerous to film inside a checkpoint. It's forbidden, but it got done anyway. And that shows how people have to cross this wall in order to go and work or to go to till their fields, attend schools and all of that. And yeah, so this is the framework of this 52-minute film.
And the film also focuses, as you mentioned, on international law and uses the example of this wall between Israel and Palestine. You have worked for the United Nations, so can you tell us a bit about your work and how you ended up working on this film?
Yeah, well, my career is in humanitarian action, if you wish. I'm a humanitarian worker, or in my case, I would say I'm a humanitarian diplomat. I learned how to negotiate and give voice to those that don't have it, so voiceless or less voice people. And that was my job for more than 20 years. Part of that, the last 10 years, I focused my work on that wall that was being built while I was in Palestine. And I was able to follow this, and I found numerous people, not just in the UN, that with me, believed that we have to monitor this. Otherwise, all of what's happening with this wall will go, as one of our judges says, into the dustbin of history. And I was a very staunch defender of the idea to monitor humanitarian impacts of the wall on Palestinian communities. Eventually I got money from the Swiss government through the UN, and I became the head of the wall or barrier monitoring unit for the UN, and we were doing exactly that. It was a research, monitoring and documentation think tank inside the UN, but we were treated very liberally in the sense that our project was supposed to be handed over to the Palestinian Authority or a university or whoever could continue the work, which didn't happen, as is often the case in development work. So when this project came to an end in 2013, literally, you can go to my webpage and you'll see there's a very short clip, and he explains in a few words why I could not leave the idea of humanitarian diplomacy on behalf of people that didn't have the voice, obviously. Just leave it, you know, because there was nobody else to do this. I was probably the person, the best placed to understand how a dead material, a wall, can actually have quite a dynamic impact on living human beings, which is something that a lot of people don't, it's not in our minds. Walls don't do anything usually, they're just there.
Inanimate object.
Exactly, exactly. And so when this whole thing came to an end, financially, resource-wise and so on, I decided, what can I do as an individual with all that knowledge to transport it, a bit like what we're doing right now, you know, make it known and create an awareness where there isn't one, especially amongst those that have decision power. And film seems to be, yeah, I think film was the only option for an individual to continue part of that work. Of course, I can't do the monitoring myself and so on, but the understanding of how this wall impacts, I have an understanding from doing this for so many years that I can, it's a bit like I continue my mandate of the UN without the UN, if you wish. So it's a lonely process, but it's I'm very happy that I've taken this decision about 7 years ago. Not always easy.
It must have been quite a transition as well compared to your previous field of work, or
yeah.
maybe it wasn't. I mean, I'm interested in that.
Yes, I mean, my friends would sum it up like, you're going to produce a film. You don't even go to the cinema. You don't have a TV at home. Do you think it is the right way to go? And I said, as always, it's not really what you can or cannot do. It's how you can surround yourself with people that can help you make that vision a reality. And this may be actually a very nice moment to be able to say to all those people, and there are hundreds of them, that gave of their time and still giving of their time to do exactly what it takes to get this film out. Here in Armenia, in this studio setup, and elsewhere, wouldn't be possible otherwise, because it would cost so much money. It's impractical, and yeah. So thanks for giving me the opportunity.
Of course. And I'm also curious, why Armenia? Why was it decided to bring the film to Armenia to do screenings that are also accompanied by debates and discussions?
The film is usually shown with debate in one way or another, even if I'm not there, or it's somebody else that takes on the role of the international lawyer, so in fora, wherever it is. So that was, the film without presence of somebody guiding people through means you can only show this film to a very small percentage of people that have the, let's say, the educational experience to be able to digest all this legal speak. So we bridge that. Armenia, I've been to Armenia, this is my third time here. Armenia has bears a lot of similarities with Palestine, I think. Also a lot of things that are not the same, but the one thing that when I was here last time, a few months ago, and this kind of struck the whole idea of Armenia, was when I was in my job, other job that I do. I was asking people about their understanding of international law, obviously coming from the idea of my film somewhere, but without precondition, simply asking, how is international law perceived in Armenia? And the answer could be in Palestine, could be in Cameroon, could be in Afghanistan. It's the same answer everywhere. International law is not doing anything for us. And I think that's wrong. That is not international law that isn't doing anything. It's just nobody shows willingness to put it into place. And of course, international law, unlike national laws, doesn't have police forces behind them, whole institutional setups and so on. So international law is let's say the more powerful wins. I mean, that's just watch the news. I think it's very clear. But I thought it would be interesting to see how the Armenians react to a film that on the surface looks like it's on Palestine, which it really isn't. It's on international law. But of course packaged into the sample that we have. And so I think I did the right decision, because I've already had a few interviews in this country and talked to people. And the fact that we were invited by so many different places in no time, including some of the institutions that are of great interest also to us, it shows there is, I think there is a lot of similarities in that sense. Not having a voice, not having a lot of other outlets, and I hope I can contribute a little bit to a discourse in this country. Maybe, discovering that it's not the international law that's the problem, it's the non-fulfillment of promises.
And there is a focus on the film and its educational aspect. There will be screenings at multiple universities, for example, and I'm sure there'll be discussions and debates held there. Why was the emphasis put so much on education?
If I translate my job description of the humanitarian diplomat, it's a simple word in English, it's called advocacy. Advocacy is about spreading or empowering people through knowledge, access to the more powerful that beneficiaries don't have, and about education. Any act of, awareness creation is an educational act. But in this case, we focus even more on the traditional type of education at higher level at this stage with my film. And that means we want to bring to the attention to the future decision makers, the students, and via the teaching staff and so on, that there is a way that you can teach international law and make it also fun and interesting. And it's not just about articles and what not. It's a living creature, if you wish. And if we can get this into the universities, and I believe we will, we've just sold 2 licenses to universities in Armenia that now offer it to all of their students through their libraries. The teachers can use it to teach with. Student unions can use it to, organize events. And that's the way really it was conceived. But that it would happen so readily, I think this is really an achievement that I'm very proud of and very happy with.
And what do you think is the relevance of Armenia to the film? And I'll put this in a two-prongs approach. What is the relevance of international law? Why is international law relevant? And emphasis is put so much on this subject in the film.
I think when Armenians talk about their history, their suffering, whatever discourse, it's very much self-centered, obviously, and that's true in all conflict areas, okay, I think. By showing there is something from outside that resembles very much the situation here, even though there's maybe no wall, but there's a conflict, and there is international law, dynamic approaches also by the government of Armenia at the moment. I think it's a self-reflection by people, and this is what we hope to achieve. I would actually say, when you in comparative terms, if you think about somebody being depressed, and if somebody going through a depression doesn't out it, but just keeps it inside, and I'm not saying that this is Armenians or anybody else, but in conflict zones, this is a common factor that you everything becomes personalized. Culture is abused very often, okay, in those circumstances. But if you have a depression and you don't out yourself, then you're basically alone. The moment you start doing something about it and you realize how many other people are also going through depressive modes in their lives for whatever reasons, divorce, death, etc., then you're no longer alone. And I think that is really like a lifeline. And I hope with this film, a little bit of that will be
well, that's kind of the message of the film, because there's whole swathes of conflict zones across the world. But it's interesting, that phenomenon that peoples tend to insulate and focus inwardly. So yeah, that's an interesting aspect to the film. How can people access the film? How can people watch the film?
At the moment, it's either through these open fora, but we have a link through a provider like Netflix, but it's called Vimeo, and Vimeo on demand has that film open to 6 languages at the moment. Armenian will be uploaded hopefully tonight or tomorrow. We've got the translations from the film festival, the Golden Apricot people, and so it will be made accessible to Armenians. We have a Russian version coming up. We have a Portuguese version coming up. So the more we can produce subtitles through, sponsorships and so on, the more we can get to people that otherwise will not be able to see the film will not be able to understand it because of the language and also the difficulty of understanding international law. So Vimeo is really the place, and that you find on our webpage. There's a link on brokenthefilm.com.
Brokenthefilm.com. Well, Stefan, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.
And thank you for joining us on CivilNet.